GoForThe2.com. We're entering week number 12 of the college football season. Week number 11 did not disappoint. We had some great matchups, some upsets, and strong performances. And this weekend is shaping up to be a great weekend of college football. I'm going to get into my predictions in a couple of seconds. I just want to remind everybody, this coming Friday, blogtalkradio.com, the NCAA Weekly Blitz Show, my co-host, former Georgia Bulldog wide receiver Corey Allen. We're going to break down the marquee matchup in the SEC this weekend between the 25th ranked Georgia Bulldogs and the 7th ranked Auburn Tigers. It's going to be a great matchup. We're going to give you both sides of the ball, in-depth analysis, breakdown, and prediction for that matchup this coming Friday, blogtalkradio.com, the NCAA Weekly Blitz Show, so check it out. Let's get right into the predictions for this coming weekend. There's a great matchup this coming Saturday in the American Athletic Conference between the 7-2 Houston Cougars and the 8-1 Louisville Cardinals. It's going to be a great matchup. When you look at Houston, they dropped a 19-14 road loss to top-ranked UCF last week. They were in a position to get the victory. They couldn't pull it out. They now have back-to-back road games, going to be facing a very high-octane vertical passing attack led by Teddy Bridgewater. When you look at the Cougars secondary, they're giving up 277 passing yards per game. I think this is a very tough spot for Houston. I think Louisville will be into this ball game. I like the wide receivers to stretch the field against a very suspect defense in Houston. I think Louisville will pick up the 48-21 dominating home victory over Houston. When you look at Houston, this is going to be their third road game in 4 games. I think they're very tired. I think that this game they do not match up from the defensive perspective up against Teddy Bridgewater and the wide receivers of Louisville. And I think this is a very tough ball game for Houston to win. I'm calling for a dominating Cardinals victory, 48-21 over Houston. Let's talk about Friday night's Pac-12 matchup between UCLA and Washington. UCLA had a very impressive road victory last week, 31-26 in Tucson against the Wildcats. They come back home now to face a very solid Washington Husky team. Washington dropped 3 straight, then they won 2 straight. They got it back together, and they're going to be facing a very tough UCLA defense. But when you look at Washington's offensive line, very big, very physical. When you look at UCLA's defense, they're surrendering 175 rushing yards per game. They're going to be going up against a very solid rushing attack led by Bishop Sankey, and I like Washington to rebound in this ball game and get the road victory, 28-21 over UCLA. I just think Keith Price is a better quarterback at this point, makes solid decisions, and I like the defensive secondary led by the Huskies going up against Brett Hundley and that offense, and I think Washington gets a solid road victory, 28-21 over UCLA. Let's talk about the Big 10 matchup between Wisconsin and Indiana. Wisconsin got a very solid performance last week in Madison, 24-14 over BYU. They were able to wear down that BYU Cougar defensive front, and they were able to rush the football against the Cougars. When you look at Wisconsin, very solid defensively in shutting down quarterback Taysom Hill and the Cougar rushing attack. If they did have some holes, it's in the secondary. They were burned by Cody Hoffman. They're going to be going up this weekend against a very solid passing attack in Indiana. I think Indiana's able to stretch the field against the Badger secondary and exploit some holes and keep this game very, very, very close. In the end, though, I think Wisconsin wins, led by James White and Melvin Gordon, the running backs. But I think this is a very tough ball game for Wisconsin because Indiana will be able to challenge the secondary and stay in this ball game. I think Wisconsin wins, but it is a very close 35-28 victory by Wisconsin in this matchup. I think it's a very close matchup, and Indiana matches up very well on the offensive side of the ball against the secondary of Wisconsin in this ball game. Let's stay in the Big Ten. Penn State at 5-4. They're going to be playing Purdue at 1-8. Purdue has a very good running back in Akeem Hunt. When you look at Purdue over the course over their over the years, they play Penn State traditionally very tough. Christian Hackenberg has had some turnover problems. That Penn State offensive line not as solid as in years past. I know Purdue's coming off a disappointing loss at home last week to Iowa. They haven't bought in yet to Darrell Hazel's system. It's going to take some time, but I like the way Purdue matches up with Penn State in this matchup. I think they keep this game very, very, very close. In the end, though, Penn State wins, but it is a very tough matchup. I just think Penn State's not as good as they were last year. Christian Hackenberg has some growing pains, and Purdue is not as bad as the 1-8 record. Just not catching a lot of breaks. The very good running back in Akeem Hunt can create some mismatches in that Penn State defense, and I think it's a very vanilla game plan by Darrell Hazel, and he looks to wear down Penn State's defensive front. I think it's a low-scoring game. In the end, though, Penn State pulls off the 24-20 victory over Purdue, but it is not easy. Let's talk about a Big 12 matchup, West Virginia, Kansas. West Virginia dropped a 47-40 victory in overtime in Morgantown to Texas. Now has to hop on a plane to Big 12 country to face the Jayhawks. They're 2-8 and have not won a Big 12 game this season. I think this is a very tough spot for the Mountaineers. They have a very solid rushing attack led by Charles Sims. When you look at the quarterback situation, a little bit shaky with Trickett and Millard over there. Had a very difficult second half of that ball game in Morgantown against Texas. They had the lead. They couldn't hold on. Dana Holgerson's fighting for his life in West Virginia. They're at 4-6. They need to win out both of these ball games. Their next two ball games to get bowl eligible. I think this is a very tough spot for West Virginia, and I like Kansas to get the home victory 35-28 over West Virginia. I just think West Virginia is reeling from an emotional overtime loss, and I like Kansas. I think Charlie Weiss will have his team ready. They pick up the 35-28 victory over West Virginia. Let's talk about two Pac-12 games. Arizona State, Oregon State. Arizona State had to come back from the dead to pick up the 20-19 victory in Utah against a very solid Utah team. Stanford wasn't able to knock off Utah at home. Arizona State was down late. They got the victory 20-19. They're going to be going up against a very solid Oregon State Beaver defense. But when you look at Taylor Kelly and Marion Grice and the wide receivers of Arizona State, they match up very well against the Beaver secondary. And I think Arizona State's gelling is a very good performance on the road last week. And I like Graham to have the team up and ready, and I think Arizona State pulls off a convincing 41-21 victory over the Oregon State Beavers at home. Very difficult place to play, and I think Arizona State gets a dominating 20-point victory over Oregon State, 41-21. Let's talk about another Pac-12 matchup. Oregon embarrassed on a Thursday night. I know they lost 26-20 to Stanford, but they were battered on both sides of the ball. Marcus Mariota did not perform well on a national stage. They now come back home to Autzen Stadium. You would think that they're going to blow the doors off a Utah club that's mediocre in terms of record. But when you look at this coaching staff, it's a first-year coaching staff. Chip Kelly moved on to the NFL. I know that all those coaches have mostly been there as assistants, but it's different when you're the head coach. We're going to see how this coaching staff handles adversity. I like Utah to be in this ball game and challenge the Oregon Ducks. When you look at DeAnthony Thomas, he didn't show up. When you look at Marcus Mariota, he didn't show up in the clutch. And they were battered defensively by the Stanford Cardinals. Stanford Cardinal were able to wear down that offensive line. I like Utah in this matchup to keep this ball game very, very close. I think Oregon rebounds, gets the victory, but it is closer than a lot of people think. 38-35 over Utah. I just don't see Oregon bouncing back as quickly from that devastating Thursday night loss as many experts do. I think it's going to be a tough matchup. I think it's going to be a great weekend of college football. I can't wait to talk about these bowl games. Stay with me all season long at GoForThe2.com.